I'm Elle Embers, and this is Cosmic Curiosities. Hey friend, it's been a while, and I am so excited to be back here with you for Season 3 of Cosmic Curiosities, Cosmic Insights. And I know that I say this at the start of probably every season, but a lot has changed. And I know that I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger last season, on whether I would return for another season, and if I did, what the show would look like moving forward. In the first 2 seasons, I teamed up with industry experts, and we did our best to create a safe space and a community in which we could all explore our curiosities around holistic and spiritual practices. And I don't know about you, but I definitely learnt a lot about myself through that process. And that's kind of what this season is about. This season is all about the magic that has continued to unfold throughout this journey. It's about the cosmic insights that I've learnt along the way, and my hope is that in sharing these insights with you, it'll help you add more magic to your everyday life. And I know that throughout the first 2 seasons, I did share bits and pieces about my journey and some of my experiences, but more specifically, my experience growing up with psychic and mediumship abilities. And this tends to be what people remember the most about me. And it probably is what you do too. But now, as a soul therapist, an energy healer, an author, a podcast host, and most importantly, a friend, it's my mission to help you rediscover and reconnect to the magic within you. But if this is your first time joining us, or you might need a bit of a recap, I should probably tell you a little bit more about who I am, what I do, and how the transformative power of energy healing changed my life forever. So, when I was about 4, I found myself dealing with psychic and mediumship abilities that I really didn't understand. And they initially felt more like a curse than a gift. I was so fearful of being rejected and labeled as weird that this led me to suppressing these gifts, and it kept me from embracing my true and authentic self. I ended up spending decades of my life hiding out of fear, until I eventually had a profound shift in my perspective through a past life experience. And that was when I realized I wasn't just hiding from the world, but I was also hiding from myself. There were pieces of my soul that had been hiding so long that I had lost them completely. And that explained why I'd felt so broken, so disconnected, and like such an outcast all of my life. And coming into this awareness meant that I had 2 choices. 1, I could continue my life hiding as I was, being miserable. Or 2, I could face my fears, reclaim those missing parts of myself, and actually create something beautiful with my life. And this brought me to the realization that no matter what I chose, none of this was going to be easy. But we get to choose the hard that we endure in our lives. It can be hard to pick up the pieces and rebuild your life. But for me, it felt like it was a lot harder to keep hiding. And so I decided to overcome my fear. And I took control of my life. And that decision, that one choice, has led me through so many different doors and windows of the spiritual world. It's allowed me to gain so many different modalities and practices under my belt that I initially started this podcast as a past life regressionist, as a tarot reader, as a soul map decoder. But now those modalities have evolved way beyond what they once were. And now there are far too many modalities involved in my practice to name them all. So I simply refer to myself as a soul therapist and energy healer. And as a soul therapist, I wear many hats, but they all serve the same purpose, and that is to support you in reclaiming those lost pieces of yourself, helping you to rediscover the amazing power within your heart, and reconnecting you to the brilliance of your unique soul. And sure, this is just a little recap, but this season is very different from the last. Because I went into season 1 and 2 of Cosmic Curiosities genuinely curious, I wanted to show you that we are not alone in our journeys of self-discovery. I wanted a safe place for us to learn about these modalities. And I wanted you to feel safe to ask the big questions. But for me, I came out the other side of these seasons, surprisingly not needing the answers to the questions I once desperately asked. Now, I'm still not claiming to have all the answers because I definitely don't. But I have discovered a new sense of self-trust. The sense that I don't need to understand something for it to be true, or that I don't need to understand how something works in order to know that it does. I found that when I stopped looking at healing as something to do when you're broken, and instead looked at it as something to do to remain whole, something changed in me, and a new type of magic was found. And that's what I want to share with you this season. I want to share the feelings of returning to wholeness and standing in your authentic power in the present moment. There is no more gatekeeping this season. I'll be sharing practices that I use and that my clients use to channel, to manifest, to reprogram limiting beliefs, and so much more. But before we start things off, I want you to have a think about something. I want you to think about where you could be wearing a mask in your life, and how you could potentially be selling yourself short by not embracing your authenticity. Because for me, I thought it was from the years and years of hiding my true self out of fear. I mean, I only really started stepping into the full truth and specifics of my abilities throughout the last 2 seasons of this podcast. And that's only the last couple of years. And yet, I've been working with these abilities for decades. And I realized recently that a lot of my clients, they go through a similar thing. They've all worn a mask at one time or another, and have been scared to embrace who they really are. Maybe it's a coincidence. But at the end of the day, we are all brought into this world with our own unique perspective, our own unique genius. And if you are not showing up in this world as your true and authentic self, then the rest of the world is missing out. And the reason that I say this is because a lot of people don't realize the importance of authenticity, or what it even really is. In 2017, German researchers used the Spain scale to measure the emotional vibrations of authenticity. And according to their study, authenticity is the highest frequency that you can be in. Higher than love, higher than joy, even higher than gratitude. It takes up a measurement all of its own. And the truth is, authenticity isn't about perfection. Perfection is a poor man's version of self-worth. Authenticity is really about being genuine, following your heart, following your truth, following your intuition, and just being all in on yourself, wholeheartedly, with radical acceptance. And that is why it is so important. The authenticity of your soul cannot be replicated. It is who you are. And that is why authenticity is so powerful and why we are so drawn to it. People like Lady Gaga, like David Bowie, people that step outside of the box and live in their truth of authenticity, no matter how weird it might seem. These are the people that we are attracted to because they are operating at a higher frequency. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of a story about a client of mine because she has an amazing genius. Her soul is so unique and it draws people to her like a magnet. She came to the realization recently that she was wearing a mask in her career. And she was wearing a mask in her career because, well, her genuine personality didn't quite match up to her career, in her perspective. And that's okay. It doesn't have to. But she felt like she needed to change her personality in order to fit the career. She works in a very male-dominated industry, and she felt like it was necessary for her to change because she felt like she was too soft. So she decided to put walls up around her heart, ones that made her appear colder, firmer, more strategic, and allowed her to feel like she had an authority over these men. And for a woman who is naturally nurturing, naturally overflowing with love, who has a very feminine presence, she appeared very masculine. And this unbalance started to show up in her personal life. It wasn't just her career anymore. She started isolating herself from those that she loved, keeping her heart locked away. And that's when she realized that she was losing the best pieces of herself. And she didn't want to be someone that she wasn't. I mean, she wasn't doing this consciously. This was all subconscious programming, subconscious beliefs. I mean, she was initially hired for this role because of the nurturing type of person that she was. So, of course, she had two options. She could keep wearing the mask, but she also thought that she could do a lot more good in her career and bring a lot more joy into her personal life by reconnecting to her authenticity and learning to let those walls come down. Or even just installing a gate so that you can get through them. So my client decided to do a healing session. And we started by looking at the beliefs that she had around a corporate role, around working in a male-dominated industry, her beliefs and her feelings around self-worth, and if they were actually serving her or not. We ended up clearing some energetic blockages, realigning her energy and her beliefs, and I'm happy to say those walls have very much come down. And I'm so incredibly proud of her because it may not have seemed like an easy task, but she decided to choose the hard that she would endure. And this is what reminded me about how I was holding a mask over who I really was for decades. But then something happened, and it's something that I didn't expect. A few weeks ago, my friend told me about a psychic development class that she was interested in, and she invited me and a group of our friends to go along together. Now, while you might be wondering why someone like me would be interested in a psychic development class, let me explain. You see, everything that I do as a cosmic trance channel is everything that I've learnt to do through trial and error. Unfortunately, I never had Mr. Miyagi teaching me how to harness my skill. So, when I heard about a psychic development class, I was really intrigued into how someone would teach or how they would instruct you to develop such a skill. Because I always felt like I was born with this ability. So I was curious that maybe in this class they could teach me something that I've never tried before. Something that could help me better understand myself and my ability. And if I could have a better logical understanding of my ability and my gifts, then perhaps I'd know how to better support my clients when they accidentally unlock theirs. So, I decided to go. And I was really excited about it. But when we arrived, my excitement immediately dissolved. And I started to worry and get in my own head about what these people would think about me. If they were here to develop their skill, and I already had mine, was I being disrespectful? Was the fact that I already worked in this industry going to intimidate someone? Was I a threat to them? Is someone like me who was born into this even welcome here? I started freaking out. So in the moment, I decided to hide myself. I decided to put on a mask and enter this workshop as if I knew nothing about spirituality. And my friends quickly kind of noticed a shift in me. They kept asking me if I was okay, and I felt like I'd come this far, and I wasn't going to quit now. So I was like, yeah, I'm excited to be here, let's get into the workshop. So we started the workshop. And let me just say, were there things in this workshop that I agreed with? Yes. Were there things in this workshop that I disagreed with? Also, yes. But I was not here as a practitioner. I was not here as a soul therapist. And I was not here as a channel. I was here as a student, willing to learn. So I did my best to keep an open mind, and I followed their instructions to the best of my abilities. Now, after a few exercises, we eventually split off into pairs to practice what we'd learnt in the workshop. And the idea was to give each other a psychic reading. And the woman that I was paired with was such a beautiful soul. We'd never met before, but she had such a beautiful energy. And as we paired off, she offered to read me first. So of course, I agreed. And I let her do her thing. And some of what she said resonated. And some of what she said didn't. And that's okay. I thanked her so much for her reading. And she asked me what I thought. So I told her that I thought she did an amazing job. There were some things that I resonated with, and there were some things that I didn't. But that's okay. Because nobody is perfect. She smiled, thanked me, and agreed, and said we were all just learning, but thanks for letting her try. I smiled. But then I realized it was my turn. And this was honestly the most nervous I think I've ever been in giving any type of reading. I started to question myself. I started to question whether I should give her an accurate reading, tell her everything that was coming through, or whether I should purposefully make mistakes and get things wrong in order to not seem advanced. And right there, that was the moment. That was the moment where I could feel the mask tighten around my head. Like I was losing part of myself. Like I said earlier, my mission as a soul therapist is to support you in reclaiming the lost pieces of yourself, to help you rediscover the amazing power within your heart, and to reconnect you to the brilliance of your unique soul. So if I chose to give this woman a purposefully inaccurate reading, that was not going to help her, and I was not upholding my mission. And I mean, have you ever tried to give someone a dodgy psychic reading on purpose? It's like trying to read tea leaves in a coffee shop, right? It just doesn't work. All I was going to do was tighten those straps on my mask and continue to hide, and potentially harm her in the process. I couldn't do that. I just couldn't. So I decided to pick myself up, dust myself off, straighten my goddamn crown, and give this woman the best reading that I possibly could. And the information was flowing through at such a quick rate. I ended up giving her an authentic and very accurate reading, much to her surprise. She was shocked. And suddenly, she started throwing around accusations like, "This isn't your first reading, and you've obviously done this before. How did you know that? How could you possibly have known that?" And I started kind of freaking out, but, I decided to tell her the truth. I took a deep breath, I took off the mask, and I said, "Yeah, this isn't my first time. I actually kind of do this for a living." She looked shocked, and she asked me why I was there. And I thought, oh God, this is it. This is where she's going to hate me. But I decided to take off the mask. So I told her the truth. And I said, well, I've had this ability since I was a child, and no one ever taught me how to use it. I just had to figure it out. So when I heard about this class, I was interested to see what they would teach, and whether there was anything new that could help me better understand myself. And she sat there for a moment, in complete silence, and my heart just dropped. I started to prepare myself for what I thought was going to be the worst case scenario, almost like a witch hunt. But she smiled. She looked up at me, and she was so excited. She told me she was so lucky to have me as her partner, and she began asking me all of these questions, asked me for tips on how she could improve her reading, and we just sat there, chatting. I got to know a little bit more about her, and I gave her some advice. And she ended up giving me another reading a few minutes later. And she'd improved. Quite a lot. More of what she said resonated. Just by implementing the advice that I gave her, in 5 minutes, her reading improved. I felt so relieved. I was so relieved that she understood, that she didn't hate me, and it was really just nice being able to sit there, to chat, and to help each other. And the reason that I tell you this story, even though it doesn't necessarily paint me in the best light, is because I realized we all have the same fears. We all have the same insecurities, and we can all feel a bit scared to put ourselves out there. But if I was to keep hiding in that situation, who would that have helped? Would it even have helped me? No. Because even if I kept up the charade, I would have left there, feeling like I could never return being myself. And subconsciously, maybe that would have changed the way that I entered the next workshop, or my next interaction with anyone from the spiritual community. Was it hard to tell her the truth? Yeah. I was freaking the fuck out. I thought I was going to be burnt at the stake, almost. But it was so much harder to keep on the mask and lose everything that I stood for. So this is where I ask you, where are you wearing a mask? And why? is wearing this mask even benefiting you? Because for me, it wasn't. For my client, it wasn't. They say that healing has layers. Kind of like Shrek, right? Ogres have layers, onions have layers. But unlike onions, healing doesn't make you cry. Well, scratch that, maybe a little, depending on the situation. Sure, I thought that I'd dealt with this, that I'd healed from this because I'd hid for decades, and now I'm out here in the public eye doing what I do for a living. But in truth, I'd only dealt with a portion of it. I dealt with a layer. And the original reason for wearing the mask all those years ago was fear. But in the most recent situation, that fear had evolved. It was more than just fear. It was also shame and guilt. I felt guilty for showing up at a class for something that I already knew how to do. And because of that guilt, because of that shame, because of that fear, I felt like I wasn't worthy of being there. So just like my client, I had to look at these emotions, look at these beliefs. And if it's one thing that I've learned throughout this journey, is that feelings demand to be felt. They will show up in one way or another. So, if I can offer any advice, if you do take some time today to ask yourself where you're wearing a mask, I want you to also ask yourself, why? Why are you wearing the mask? And if thoughts or feelings arise, I want you to take some time to sit with them. Take some time to process them in a healthy way. Whatever that way looks like for you, before moving to the next stage of releasing them. That way, these feelings, those emotions, they can loosen their grip over you and your life. Showing up in your truth, showing up in your power, showing up in your authenticity can be scary at first. But if my insights over the last few years have taught me anything, it's that every time I've shown up authentically, shit really falls together. It just does. Opportunities that I only ever dreamt of became reality. And things just seem to work out when you stop focusing on how and just start living in the now. And I've realized that it is a frequency thing. When you're living in that frequency of authenticity, in the present moment, it is the highest frequency. Therefore, anything that you attract is always in your best interest. And when you start to realize that everything in your life is benefiting you in some way, shape, or form, magic suddenly seems real because magical things start to happen. So friends, remember, you are the architect of your desires, the architect of your happiness. So if you want to create a life full of magic, all you have to do is decide. It's that simple. The intention of living a truly magical life, a truly authentic life. There is so much power in just that. The intention. And I have to thank you for letting me continue this journey with you, sharing my intentions for the season, sharing my insights, my stories, sharing the magic, because I can't wait to see the magic that unfolds for you. And if you do start putting some of these things that I share this season into practice, and magic starts to unfold for you, and you'd like to share that with me, please do. Send me a message or however you want to contact me, because I'd love to know. Because as always, we're in this together. I want you to know that I see you, the real you, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you letting me continue this journey with a friend. Until next time. This is your Earthside Spirit Guide signing off. Thanks for joining me for today's Cosmic Insight. If you're ready to unleash the magic of your soul and want to work with me, you can send me a message on Instagram at Elle.embers or visit my website, elleembers.com.